my presentation. Let me share my screen. Okay, so as we said, this webinar is organized in the framework of efficient buildings community by the University of Patras, and more specifically the Department of Civil Engineering, which is partner in the Efficient Building Horizontal Project. The webinar focuses on the school buildings, and its aim is to present methodologies and tools that can be used to support public authorities in developing, implementing, and monitoring energy renovation plans in such buildings. The webinar brings together experts from Mediterranean countries who will share their knowledge and experiences in energy renovation and management of school buildings through the implementation of inter-regiment projects under Efficient Buildings Community and beyond. Let me say a few words about the Efficient Buildings Community. The inter-regiment program identified the need for horizontal projects in the programming period of 2014-2020 and describes them as the unifying element of modular projects working on the same theme. In this regard, Efficient Buildings is the second generation of the horizontal project funded under the priority named Fostering Low Carbon Strategies and Energy Efficiency in Specific Med Territories, and more specifically under the specific objective, namely to raise capacity for better management of energy in public buildings. Efficient Buildings Community follows up the Mednis horizontal project, which was the first generation of the horizontal project of the Interreg program. The duration of the Efficient Buildings Community is from November 2019, and it will end at the end of 2022. What is important to mention is that our thematic community, the Efficient Buildings Community, consists of 10 modular projects. Some of them are closed and some are ongoing, promoting strategies and tools to support and speed up strategic planning of public building energy renovation in the Mediterranean through an integrated and territorially based cooperation approach. So what is our scope? What we do in the Efficient Buildings Community? First of all, we support the communication activities and the promotion of the modular projects of our community, the 10 projects that we mentioned before. Then we disseminate the modular projects results in the thematic of energy efficiency in public buildings. We organize events to create synergies among projects and identify opportunities. We increase the transferring and the replication potential of results at other territories. We increase capacities of owners and managers of public buildings to design and implement better energy efficiency practices. And finally, we promote capitalization of the modular project results and our results at policy, national and EU level to influence public policies taking into account the MED specificities. Here you can see the Efficient Buildings Partnership and where you can find more information about our project. I was short because I think that it is more important to proceed with the presentations of our invited speakers. So let me stop sharing my screen. Excuse me. My computer doesn't want to collaborate. Here it is. Okay, and now we can proceed with the first invited speaker, Miss Jana Stanic. Ms. Stanic is a project manager at the Institute for Innovation and Development of University of Ljubljana. Her background is in preparation and management of grant-funded projects. In her career, she has written and cooperated in over 200 national and EU project proposals, and she will present us EduFootprint Plus project, one of the modular projects which is under the Efficient Buildings community. Ms. Stanic, the floor is yours.
Hello again from my side. As Ms. Constantina said, I come from the Institute for Innovation and Development.
Ms. Stanic, we cannot hear you very well. If you can come a little closer to the microphone, perhaps.
Okay, how about now?
Yes, I think it is better.
Sorry for the technical issues. So as I was saying, I'm from the Institute for Innovation and Development of University of Ljubljana. University of Ljubljana is the oldest and largest in Slovenia. It was founded in 1919. It's a public university. It has 26 faculties and 3 academies. But the academies are artistic. It has about 49,000 students, about 4,000 researchers, and around 305 research groups, laboratories, and institutes. So we are quite a large bunch. However, our Institute for Innovation and Development, or URI for short, is a joint venture between the University of Ljubljana and the 10 most technologically advanced and successful Slovenian companies. We were founded as a non-profit research and development institute, which has a mission to promote the integration of innovation triangle, which goes to research, education, and innovation, by transferring the research results into practice and commercial exploitation, which means in more normal, in other words, that we are a multidisciplinary team, and as such, we excel at working as a sort of translator between the social, mostly anthropologists, and technical experts in interdisciplinary projects, facilitating the interaction of academia, industry, and public administration. And I just noticed that I forgot to share my screen. I'm very sorry. I'll do it right now. My apologies. Can you see? Hopefully. So this is some nice pictures of Ljubljana and the university building. And this is basically what we are doing. We are also the energy management manager for University of Ljubljana buildings. What does this mean? It means basically that we are trying to train the personnel towards being more energy efficient. We are monitoring the energy consumptions of the buildings of Ljubljana University, which there are quite a lot of them. We're facilitating the energy information system, but most of all, we're trying to motivate the end users to work towards changing the habits in using energy. In one of our previous projects, Mobistyle, we actually calculated how much energy we could save by using the stairs, not the elevator. So that was quite fun. But what we're trying to do is change the perception from buildings consume energy to the fact that actually people use energy. So we really need to focus on the people-faced approach. In that light, we were first invited to the Edo Footprint project, which was the original project. And Edo Footprint Plus is the main aim of this project is to transfer the tools and methodologies that were developed in the original Edo Footprint project to new territories and to new public buildings. In the original Edo Footprint project, we were focused mainly on school buildings. Now we are focusing on other public buildings, such as public buildings for ministries or museums or kindergartens or similar. So the Edo Footprint project intends to raise the capacity of owners and managers of public buildings and to promote low carbon footprints in schools and public buildings in the Mediterranean area. Therefore, we are using different tools to do so. This is just a short scope on one of the measurements we took in the previous Edo Footprint project. The building in question is the new building for the University of Ljubljana chemistry faculty. And we could see how much the mobility or the energy consumption was in climate change. In the pie chart is for CO2 kilograms and so on. However, because the results of the first Edo Footprint project were so successful, we got funding for Edo Footprint Plus, which transferred these results to new areas, such as Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro, and Albania. As I was saying, we are doing this as sort of transfer of knowledge between givers and receivers. The givers were us as Eri Ula and Ambienta Italia, which was one of the previous partners. And we were coached the receivers, which are from Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Croatia, through the e-support system to use the Edo Footprint tools, such as the calculator and app. And the receivers will, in kind, identify significant impact areas of public buildings, and they will plan effective allocation of resources and time towards strategy, so to decrease harm to the environment and people. Therefore, we created knowledge transfer tools, such as the calculator. The calculator is basically a Excel sheet with a lot of it's basically a tool to calculate the environmental footprint of public schools and public buildings. And the calculator covers energy consumption, product consumption, mobility, food, and waste. Therefore, we input data like the electric energy, thermal energy, water consumption, the electricity. We input data whether the electricity comes from nuclear plants or solar plants or different type of plants. The thermal energy is also similarly distributed, and the water consumption in how much water is consumed by the building in general. We also pay attention to product consumption, let's say paper products or stationery products or toilet paper and cleaning products and so on. Everything is input in this calculator, and then the calculator gives out the basically the scope of the calculator is to measure and assess the environmental footprint of specific public building. So this has been shown to be quite efficient. For more information, you can access the web page in the presentation, and you can also download it and try it for yourself if you'd like. However, more the mobile app is an interactive tool for the building users. It calculates the building's carbon footprint in terms of electricity, heat, paper, mobility, and so on. And it also presents the so-called EDO points, which you can play with by adjusting your carbon footprint data. So this is the mobile app. It's available to download from the Google App Store. However, at the moment, it is limited to the EDO Footprint Plus partners because we are still in the testing phase. But it should be available for the general public in the spring. So, what are the basic characteristics? And you have, of course, the basic data and logos about EDO project, the database about the demo buildings. So we have key CO2 footprint data. And you have the knowledge base, which is all the statistics, information, and storytelling. And of course, you can play with EDO footprint, EDO points to decrease your building's CO2 footprint. You can find more information in the link provided. And finally, we can there is the EDO Footprint Plus web page. Is also when you can see all the tutorials about the project, the calculator, the mobile app, and very soon we'll also upload the EDO kit. Sorry, the EDO kit. It's sort of a tutorial, but it contains all the EDO Footprint Plus tools, and also how to reduce the footprint in your public buildings with helpful tips about energy and natural resources, circular economy, and waste management, building consumptions, mobility, food, and so on. this is very shortly a presentation about our project. However, if you have any other questions, please let me know. I'm available. So if you have anything else, please let me know. I'll stop there and
Thank you a lot, Jana, for this presentation. I have some questions, but I will keep them for the end of the webinar, which will have time also for questions from the audience. Now we can proceed with the next presentation. We will have a slight change here in the agenda. Mariana Segreto from Enea had an unexpected incident, so her colleague, Mr. Mattia Ricci, is with us to present, to make the next presentation, the test school project presentation. Mr. Mattia Ricci is a skilled structural engineer with a PhD in computational wind engineering. Currently, Mr. Ricci is a researcher at the Italian National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development, Enea. He is also a member of the Laboratory for the Energy Efficiency and an expert in the fields of numerical simulations and energy efficiency of buildings. Mr. Ricci, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Costantina. Now I share my screen. Okay, could you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So today I'm here to show you the main results and the main outcomes of the project named T-School, that stands for Transferring Energy Efficiency in Mediterranean School Project, that is co-financed by the European Regional Development Fund. So the project aims to develop a strategy for the Mediterranean countries that can support the public administration in energy renovation of public buildings, in particular public schools, promoting the construction of nearly zero energy building. The project consortium is made up of 11 partners from 7 different countries. So Italy, Greece, Spain, Cyprus, Croatia, France, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Enea is the project coordinator. The main outcomes of the project are 2 tools, in particular one tool that is a pre-audit simplified web tool and a database of best practices. The pre-audit web tool has been tested and validated in 3 schools of the 7 partner region. The pilots included the energy audits of representative school buildings, the calculation of carbon footprint, and the renovation activities. Finally, available financing models have been inventoried in all partner countries. Furthermore, an open course have been conducted. In particular, an e-learning course have been developed, which is available through the link that you can see in the slide. And policy recommendations have been issued to remove the identified barriers for a full exploitation of the energy efficiency potential of the public buildings which are analyzed. So talking about the web tool, this web tool allows school building stakeholders to evaluate the energy profile of the building and to assess the energy saving that are achievable by renovation activities. It is important to highlight that the tool is not a design tool, of course, because the design actions must be entrusted to professionals, so engineer, architects, energy experts, chosen by the public building owner. The tool, however, gives the possibility to evaluate if it is the case to proceed with a deepened energy audit, and then it allows to evaluate what is the intervention that can give the greatest energy savings. Here we can see, of course, the tool is freely available through the link that you can see in the bottom right part of the slide. Here we can see a picture that shows us the main part in which the tool is organized. So there is the energy profile module, the renovation option module, and the economic module. The online tool is very user-friendly and calculates the energy profile of the building. I'm talking about, of course, the energy profile module. Then the renovation option module gives the options for the improvement and also gives the carbon footprint of the improvements. Finally, the economic module gives an evaluation of the main economic indicators of the investment, so net present value, time of investment retirement, and so on. All these data are can be downloaded in the format of PDF or Excel files. Regarding the energy profile module, the user is asked to give as an input the school details in terms of consumption over 3 years, volumes and surfaces, operating time factor, which is very important to assess the energy consumption, and operating degree days, which take into account the location where the building is placed. Then the renovation option module is able to give the contribution to the energy savings action by action. Here we can see that, for example, glazing can be improved, as well as roof, walls, basement, heat generators, lights, and technical plans. Finally, the total energy saved in terms of both electric and thermal can be achieved, as well as the CO2 equivalent savings and the school bus kilometers equivalent savings, in order to give the user an idea of what the renovation intervention have done. The last module is the economic module, and is given to the user in terms of an Excel file, where the main economic parameter can be seen, for example, NPV, ERR, and so on, in order to, for example, calculate how many years of exercise are necessary to recover the investment done for the energy retrofit, basically. Then in the same website, there are also collected the database of the best practices. Here you can see a screenshot of this part, where for each country the school analyzed are listed, and the file for each building can be downloaded. As well as the web tools, the T-School project has developed also a freely available e-learning course that is divided in 13 modules. You can see the modules in this slide, and the e-learning course can be attended through the link I showed you before. I think that's all. So I'm here for any questions, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Mattia, very much
Thank you.
for this brief, but I can say very, at the same time, very detailed presentation. I have also for you some questions, but at the end. And now we can proceed to the next presentation. I don't know if Mr. Stefano Pagani is here, or another colleague of him from the Energy Agency of Friuli Venezia Giulia is here to make the presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours for Sysma Plus project presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to say that the positive thing is that our project, in a way, is an integration with the one that's been presented now by Mr. Ricci, regarding the pre-audit analysis, and with also it also takes into account behavioral management as well of the building. Not only it's mainly regards the energy part, but there's also a possibility to include other important things that have an impact on the energy management on the whole of the building. So what I will do is I will present the Excel file. So as I wrote to you yesterday, I'd like to give it a kind of a more practical presentation. And I've just got I've just got 2 slides, not more, just to give a general introduction about what the whole thing is. Okay, so just a moment. Let me, okay, excellent. Let's see if it works. Okay, do you see this question? Can you see it?
Not yet.
Because I chose the option. Allora, here it is. Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
Do you see it now? I suppose so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now we can see it.
Okay. So basically, what does this tool? We haven't got the time to go through all the financial aspects, obviously, in detail, but basically, and all the details. But basically, what does this tool do? What makes it? Let's say it was considered innovative at the time we had this idea. Basically, it's to calculate, as written over there, the exact amount that a subsidy or a grant, okay, therefore we're speaking about money, capital support, a grant, to make energy interventions on public buildings, therefore schools as well, bankable, minimizing public spending. And on the other hand, optimizing the capacity of, let's say, the public authorities to realize and to make and to implement energy efficiency projects, since they are minimizing the amount they're spending. Why is this? Because generally what is done is either there's a public tender where they say, okay, we'll give you, let's say, 100% of the investment up to, let's say, a certain amount. Okay, so there's a cap on the amount, and the percentage can be 100%, or in other cases, they'll say, let's say a regional or provincial authority will provide 60%, and then maybe in our region, it's the municipalities now that run that basically manage the schools, can be the provinces in other parts, can be other kind of public authorities. This is not important. What is important is that we have changed the approach. So instead of saying, okay, I'll give you a fixed rate of a certain amount, the question is, how much should we exactly spend in order to make this project bankable? So what do we mean by a bankable project? Because this is the second question. Let's say that in general, the idea is that there's a tender. In the tender, there's a certain subsidy, there's an amount, there's a grant. Therefore, they say, we want to refurbish, we want to make sound energy efficiency measures on this school, for example. And we will, and let's say that they have used the tool. So in the tender, more or less, it's just to give an idea. Let's say, let's make an hypothesis like the cost is 600,000 euros. We will give you in advance, or anyway on a capital basis, 400,000 euros, and you will be enabled to. This is for the companies that want to send in a bid, that want to give a response to the tender, and you will get the savings. You're entitled to the savings produced by the interventions for 15 or 20 years, which amount to a certain figure per year, per annum. So what do the companies do? They say, okay, what do you want? Speaking to the, let's say, the public authority that manages a school. He says, I want to make an intervention on the envelope. I want to change all the glazing, therefore the windows. I want to isolate the roof. I want to change the boiler, whatever it is. These are the interventions. So basically they say, okay, this is what you need. Companies work out what the cost would be. They understand on the one hand how much the grant is, the capital they will be getting, and they put this together with all the savings this will generate, which is obviously written in the tender, and then they say, okay, what is the internal rate of return of this kind of investment? Therefore, these financial indicators we also spoke, Mr. Ritchie spoke about before. And if the internal rate of return is deemed, let's say, acceptable, the project is bankable. In other words, companies will say, okay, I can do it. Companies directly, or even ESCOs, energy, companies owned or whatever, because tender should be open to all should be as open as possible. And in this case, the interesting thing is that all these companies do is work out their own personal internal rate of return. They make a calculation. Obviously, the public authority cannot do that because it has a general tender. So obviously prices that are referred to are usually higher than the prices that real companies have, because the market prices obviously contain, let's say, what the profit is, okay? And on top of that, we don't know what the internal operational capacities of the companies are. But nonetheless, what we did do anyway is, and this is, we're speaking about our own experience, we gave a couple of phone calls to the major banks operating in our territory. We called the ESCOs that are often owned by banks. And we asked them, what is your internal rate of return? What percentage do you think is the minimum you want? So first of all, they said, okay, it was about 6 months ago. So it was, anyway, the percentage is rather low. Why? Because the internal rate of return that banks owning ESCOs or companies usually want, obviously depends on the risk reward profile of the investment. What does this mean? That if you win a tender with a public authority and you know how to do your job and you do it well, it's not like working on the market where you have other kind of risks. So obviously, the risks are far much lower than the average risk a company can incur when it has to operate on a market where, maybe your clients may not pay you, the market can go up, can go down. So obviously, the risk is lower. So let's say that on a basic standard approach, what do? We say, okay, these kind of operations, these kind of investments require at least 15, 20 years of savings that have to be given to the company. Okay, so let's say a public-private partnership, besides the grant, obviously, on top of the grant. So the interesting thing is that we could say, okay, so considering that the risk is really low, it's really low. What we can do is, basically what is done on a practical basis is we consider what the average interest rate on public debt, on bonds that the citizens own. In other words, citizens finance their country by buying bonds, long-term bonds, which have an interest rate which is obviously very, very low. Like in Italy, it used to be around 0%, or now I think it's about 1.5%. And basically what they do is they say, okay, this is if the company says, if we were to invest our money in public bonds that last the duration of, let's say, 15 years, what would the interest rate be? Let's say 1.5 average on an annual basis. So all we've got to do is basically, let's say, add a 3%, from 3.5% minimum to this, which, why? Because obviously, compared to buying bonds, in other words, compared to lending, actually borrowing money to the government, there's an extra risk because you have to do you have to carry out a job. You need money to do this. So obviously you need an extra compensation for this. So basically, there's a markup that has to be added around, let's say 3%. So let's say if putting your money in, let's say governmental bonds will yield you 1.5% annual average. To do it privately, the internal rate of return deemed acceptable is around, let's say 4.5%, 5%. Okay. Why am I saying this? This is very important because this is the whole system revolves around this. In other words, knowing that companies in averagely, I mean, on an average basis, want to have an internal rate of return, which is around, let's say 4.5 or 5% or whatever, we can work out, this is what the set does, we can work out what the subsidy should be in order to enable the company to make this project bankable. So as you can see, it is totally different. It's not saying like, let's say, when it comes to strategic planning, it's not like saying, okay, we've got, let's say, an important region, a big province, we've got 10 million euros and we want to finance 15 or 10 projects, big projects, and we'll be putting in averagely 1 million euro for every project. And that's it, with 100% coverage or 80% coverage or with a fixed percentage. Because you can understand that in this case, the companies that will be doing this will be getting an extra margin on, they're getting like an extra profit compared to what the minimum internal rate of return would be. But on the other hand, public spending is not being optimized, because probably where you're providing, let's say, an 85% percentage of coverage, you could make it with 70, maybe 75, it depends. So putting all this together, you can understand that the idea here is really to optimize public funding. Okay, so this is a scheme, and then we'll go through the Excel file, but just to give you a general idea of what it is. So the subsidy process basically is, once we've worked out what the minimum internal rate of return required by the market, as I said, generally what governmental bonds plus, let's say, 3.5%. So when you add a couple of phone calls, that's how you get to know what it is. That's how you fix it, and you say, okay, it's about 4.5%, 5%. Excellent. So if your internal rate of return, let's say, then considering a set of energy efficiency measures, envelope, glazing, boiler, behavioral, whatever it is, doesn't matter. With the Excel file, you can calculate what the internal rate of return is. Okay, you can do that. Once you've calculated what the internal rate of return is, if the internal rate of return provided by the savings is higher than the internal rate of return that the market wants, you don't need a subsidy, because how do we calculate this internal rate of return? By simply discounting all the savings, let's say in 20 years, that this investment in energy efficiency will generate. Now, this is obviously on a theoretical level. So, as I said, if the savings are so good that you don't need a subsidy, you don't need a grant, because the savings are enough to ensure that the companies that will be doing this, let's say there's an ESCO or even a building construction company that will carry out the investment and then just cash in all the predefined savings, will give them an internal rate of return which is larger than the minimum one required by the market. They don't need a subsidy. But the thing is that this situation, and then therefore you can carry on to the tender, as I said, at tender number one, you issue your tender and you carry on with your work. But this is practically impossible. This never happens. And especially over here in the Mediterranean area, in our area, it's nearly it's technically impossible. Why? Because this can work maybe because when we used to go around and we used to travel to the European Union, I used to present a couple of projects where these things work. Well, you know, they used to work in countries like, I don't know, Estonia, therefore cold weather, buildings that were built during the Soviet era. And what kind of buildings were they? Enormous, huge buildings with a very, very regular geometric form that were based on the idea that gas was free, therefore with terrible windows, basically no insulation, envelope was not existing. It's obvious that when if you carry out a certain kind of an energy refurbishment on, let's say, the envelope and the glazing system, and in those conditions, well, yes, probably you can make it. But in other realities, like especially the Mediterranean areas, these things do not work. In fact, it is not a case that we've tried everything, and at the end of the day, for example, in Italy, we've got a thing called 110% incentive grant, basically, or other kind of grants. In other words, there has to be a subsidy. Otherwise, the costs required to carry out the important sound energy efficiency measures on buildings generate savings that even over a period of 20 years usually yield a negative internal rate of return, or the internal rate of return is around zero. And that is why there are no spontaneous, and there have been no spontaneous, let's say, interventions, proposals on behalf of ESCOs or other building or general building constructing companies before this, in general, not only in Italy, but all around Europe. There's, whilst before, let's say up to 10 years ago, it would be normal to have companies that would offer to change, to refurbish, to change or to replace the plants. I'm speaking about the boilers, and they would say, okay, doing this, I will do this for you. You won't pay anything, and the savings, you give me the savings for the next 10, 15 years. These things were very, very common, and they worked very, very well. Why? Because the cost of the intervention compared to the savings was good. In other words, the investment required was low compared to the savings. But when it comes to the envelope and to sound, really sound energy refurbishing, it's the opposite. Because yes, the savings are good. Yes, the savings probably in this year, considering the general situation we're in, obviously energy prices have gone up, have rocketed through the sky and are very, very high. I understand this, but it won't last, I hope, forever. But on the other hand, investments and costs for the envelope, for the glazing, have also risen a lot due to the inflation. So it's always there. We're always there. The problem is that in general, you have to spend a lot of money to get very low savings in comparison to investment. So in this case, going back to the slide, which is the 99% of the situations, what will happen? That the internal rate of return required by the market is higher than the internal rate of return which is produced by the investment, considering only the savings as the income for the company. So basically, what do we do? We have an initial, this is the initial investment level in order to carry out, let's say, a set of energy efficiency measures. As I said before, the envelope and the roof insulation, glazing system, windows, replacement, whatever. This is the initial investment over here. And the internal rate of return on the project, as you can see, is too low, okay? Because it's from zero and goes up this way. So it's too low. What do we have to do? We have to calculate the subsidy. The subsidy is, as you can see over here, the red arrow, the exact amount, which basically lowers the investment that the company has to carry out. So it's deemed at a level, let's say, of approximately, let's say, 90 over here, nearly 100, and we have to take it down to this amount so that the, in this case, the whole investment, the project, let's say, will yield an interest rate, an internal rate of return, which is exactly the amount required on an average basis by the market. In other words, this is the subsidy. In other words, we have to say, look, you will be enabled, you company, you bidder, you ESCO, you will be enabled to receive the savings for the next 20 years. But on top of that, you will also get a subsidy, cash, which is exactly the amount indicated here. So that instead of investing, let's say 100, you'll have to be investing around 60, okay? So obviously, if the required initial investment, therefore, is reduced, the combination of the reduced investment and the savings enable the company to yield a certain internal rate of return, which is deemed minimum, which is okay, and is on average the minimum one required by the market, and therefore this puts the public authorities in the condition of issuing tenders where hopefully at least a couple of companies, or hopefully more, should be interested in sending in their bids. Okay, so now let's pass on to the Excel file, just to give it a quick look so that we can see how this works, because we've spoken a lot about theory. Now let's go back to practice. Okay. So the first thing you can do, you select the language. There are, like, it's in Spanish, French, Greek, Italian, Slovenian, Portuguese.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
We cannot see the Excel file.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Now, let's see if over here. Okay. Sorry. Here. You see it now?
Yes, now.
Okay. So as I said, first thing you select the language. I'll put it on English. Then what you do is, and this is also similar to the pre-ordered file, the web one presented by Anea before. So basically, there's a section where you fill in, obviously, we're speaking about, in this case, a school. Okay, the language, okay, right. So you write down the school, the address, the general, data regarding the school. Then, as you can see here, we've got different kind of options. What we will choose is school, okay? So what we have to do here is fill in, for example, the construction year, because obviously this is also a pre-ordered model. Basically, what we've done is we've worked out standard building technical characteristics of buildings based on the construction year in our region, considering what the kind of the materials were and what the average geometrical status of the school is. And oh, by the way, we've also tested this Excel. In other words, we carried out a precise energy audit of 20 schools for another kind of work we've done before. And once we finished this Excel file, we tested the file with the real audits we've done. And on an average basis, it's okay. It's obviously, it cannot be very, very precise in the case of, let's say, buildings where for architectural reasons, the building is very far from what the standard building for that year was, considering, the form of it, the materials and so on. So anyway, construction year, heating degree days, which depends on where the school is on the location. And then we have to fill in basic data like the net internal area, the heated volume, and the number of floors, okay? Other aspect, which is important, is regarding the heat consumption. So in this case, like in our case, we use gas, so you can choose several kind of energy vectors. What we work basically on, in our case, unfortunately, is gas. And this is the data. So we need to know, it would be better to have the last 3 years, the consumption. And then there's another module which is dedicated to the consumption of electricity measures. So you have to fill in that. So we need, as you can see, we do need some basic data. Otherwise, this cannot be done. And at this point, what do? We consider, first of all, what kind of option we will be, what I call option A, a simplified estimation, a pre-audit, you can put it this way. There's also option B. If you have already carried out an audit, there'll be option B. In this case, you just go down at the end of the sheet and you fill in the data here. But we've put this as an option, but it's not important for us. What really is important, is option A. We are interested in pre-auditing, in estimations. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but anyway, over here, we can choose a certain amount of energy measures. So like external insulation of walls, internal insulation of walls, roof insulation, attic insulation, basement insulation, replacement of windows, boiler replacement, installation of thermostatic valves, heating system efficiency improvement, and so on.
Excuse me, Stefano, because the time is running out. If you can proceed to the results tab.
I'll do it very quick. Okay. Once you've done all this, basically, you can calculate. It calculates what the savings are, and it will also calculate what the subsidy is in money and in percentage. So in this case, the subsidy needed is 73%. Okay, in order to make this investment bankable within, let's say, a public-private partnership. So this is it, very, very briefly. And as you can see, the percentage required, the grant compared to investment is, in this case, 73, but usually it's around, let's say, from 70 to 80%. It's very high because, as I said before, sound energy measurement, energy efficiency measures are very expensive, and they unfortunately produce savings which are not that high. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefano.
Okay.
During your presentation, I was wondering which are the cases that savings are so good that no subsidy process is not needed, but you answered the...
They don't exist, yeah.
Yeah.
Very rare, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And now we can proceed with the last presentation about school energy refurbishment in the region of Western Macedonia in Greece. Miss Alexandra Karamouza will make the presentation. She is an electrical engineer specializing in energy refurbishment of buildings. Currently, she's a PhD candidate at the University of Western Macedonia and part of the project team of the SEM Lab laboratory there in the university, which specializes in energy saving issues. Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here today. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm part of the SEM Lab team at the University of Western Macedonia. The University of Western Macedonia here in Greece is a university which is very sensitive in issues of energy refurbishment of buildings. It has the aim of becoming the first university in Greece where all its buildings will be nearly zero energy buildings. About the schools, I will share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. The field of energy saving, as well as the protection of the environment, is a priority of the European Union. More specifically, I would stress that energy saving in buildings through the building renovation wave is an area with a strong developmental dimension that combines the strengthening of national economies with the protection of the environment. After a statistical analysis of the energy efficient certificates posted during the period of 2011 and 2018, nearly 60% of the buildings in the tertiary sector in Greece are classified in the energy category C and D, while the largest percentage of energy is consumed to meet the needs of cooling, heating, and lighting on those buildings. Oil contributes almost 20% to the energy balance, while electricity contributes to 77% respectively. The Greek public buildings present high energy consumption, resulting in the suffocating expansion of the country's energy balance, increasing the country's energy poverty. The vast majority of the public buildings in Greece were built before 1980 and are not heat insulated, so they require very large amounts of energy to ensure acceptable comfort conditions in the winter. The Laboratory of Renewable Energy Sources and Intelligent Energy Management, SEMLAB, of the University of Western Macedonia, is responsible for the education of the students of the Department of Electrical Engineering of the university, as well as for the research activities of the scientific team that consists of it. The laboratory specializes in smart electrical network technologies, in energy inspections of buildings with in situ measurements, and has a lot of experience in conducting studies to improve the energy efficiency of public buildings. More specifically, concerning the school buildings in the region of the Western Macedonia, the SEM Lab has conducted several studies for the energy refurbishment of many school buildings. As you can see now, at the prefecture of Grevena, we have conducted energy refurbishment studies for 22 buildings. We are talking about 25,628 square meters, approximately 2,000 students at those schools, primary schools, kindergartens, middle schools, and high schools. At the prefecture of Florina, here in Western Macedonia, we have conducted energy refurbishment studies for 19 buildings. At the municipality of Veria, we have conducted energy refurbishment studies for 3 school buildings. The total budget is 1,646,000 euros for those buildings. We can see the square meters and the number of students. The more recent studies we have conducted were for 4 school buildings of the municipality of Nestorio at Kastoria. All the above energy upgrade projects were approved for financing by ESPA and by financing programs of the region of Western Macedonia. The selection of those programs for funding depended on the budget of its project in relation to the energy reduction that the project will produce to the building after the refurbishment. The first major problem our team encountered in trying to complete the studies was the overwhelming lack of plans of the buildings, as well as the lack of the information on the plans following changes that occurred during the operation of the school buildings. This led to utilize data from the platform of the Ministry of Education, My School, in which updated data of all the school units of the country are registered. Furthermore, an online platform was created in which users, most commonly the school principals, were asked to fill in school building details. After that, and after the on-site visits in every building, the thermophysical characteristics of each building, as well as the heating and cooling systems and lighting data, were simulated in the Take and Act program. This program is created by the Technical Chamber of Greece for the simulation of the energy classification of buildings. The vast majority of the buildings were non-thermally, school buildings were non-thermally insulated, with windows without thermal break and with heating systems which use oil. Furthermore, the boilers used in each case were significantly oversized. Each building, each school building, was treated separately and according to its own needs. But in general, the interventions to minimize the energy requirements of the building that were used was installation of external thermal insulation, installation of roof insulation, new aluminum frames with thermal break, installation of air-water heat pumps in the buildings, installation of LED luminaires, and installation of a new central heating cooling distribution system at each school. The schools in the regions of Grevena, Florina, and Veria are in the phase of the completion of the projects by the builders. In the coming months, they will be delivered completed, and most likely in the next school year, they will operate energy upgraded. The school buildings of Nestorio are in the phase of the tender of the project and the submission of the bids by the contractors. Here we have an example of the implementation of the energy refurbishment of a school building. It's the primary school of Lemos, of the municipality of Prespa. The energy efficiency class of the school before the refurbishment was Z, and after the refurbishment, its energy efficiency class was B+. The expected yearly primary energy savings was 146.4 kilowatt hours per square meter, or 65% energy saving. Here we can see some photos of the energy refurbishment of the building, installation of external thermal insulation, installation of roof insulation on the building, installation of air-water heat pumps and the new heating distribution system for the building. The budget was 132,000 euros. More than 30,000 euros per year were saved. The project finished at 2016, and the operating cost of the school on 2017-2018 was 2,500 euros on that year. It was dramatically lower than the operating cost before the energy upgrade, according to the school building manager. The energy refurbishment of school buildings contributes to saving natural resources, less dependence on conventional fuels, saving financial resources, reduction of fuel imports, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, great protection of the environment, and most importantly, contributes to raising the awareness of children and adolescents on issues regarding energy saving and environmental protection, as they understand in an experiential way the results of energy upgrades of the buildings they spend their days in. Thank you for your attention. That's all for me.
Thank you, Alexia, very much for your presentation. Your work that you have done and you're doing is great, taking into account the Greek reality. So thank you very much for presenting this work here in this webinar. Now, is there anybody from the audience that would like to make a question to our speakers? I know that the time has passed, but the presentations were very interesting. So one question from my side is, since we are talking about school buildings, And I think that I'm referring more to the Edu Footprint and T-School project. I would like to ask you if you have engaged students also in your activities, maybe through some training courses or workshops. This is something I was wondering.
I can answer for the T-School project.
Yes, Maria, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, students are not directly involved in the sense that the web tool, during the development of the web tool, but of course they also can be user of the tool, because the user can be really everyone who is interested in the school, so stakeholders, so the public administration, but also the students. They can use the tool and assess the condition in terms of energy efficiency of their old school buildings. But regarding the development of the tool, no, they have not directly been involved in that. But it's a very good idea. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Mattia. And Jana, yes?
Yes, if I may. In the first Edu Footprint project, the students were directly involved in all aspects of the project. We also have some videos of them. Actually, they were making the videos of themselves while working on the project. So it was quite fun.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And a small comment, maybe not a question, is that all people that we have worked with in the field of energy efficiency of public buildings, I'm sure that we have faced the difficulty of the lack of data of the buildings. Some of our speakers already mentioned this, and Alexia. I don't know if somebody, Alexia, would you like to comment more on this? Because it is a hard task to find the data before starting all these renovation studies.
Yes, it was a challenge for us to find all the school plans, all the plans for all the schools. And one common problem here in Greece is that the public, not all public buildings are, how can I say, legal, have the permits for all the buildings. And for some buildings, there was a procedure to be done before we could do our job and present the energy refurbishment of the building to an ESPA project or to the region for funding, because it is a prerequisite for the building to be legally to have a legal permission for the owner to use it.
Yes, it may sound really weird, but it happens for sure in Greece. I don't know for other places as well. But even public buildings are not legally permitted, and sometimes not statistically also capable. I think Antonio Zonta has raised his hand.
Thank you, Konstantina. No, I had a question for Jana Stanic concerning Edu Footprint. Do you have a new set of pilot buildings in this second, let's say, edition of the project, or are you working on the same buildings as in the original Edu Footprint project?
Hello. We are working on a different set of pilot buildings because there are also different partners. And we enlarged the scope from schools to all kinds of public buildings. And may I just refer to the previous question from Konstantina. I don't think we had a lot of problems getting the data from the buildings, because this information is quite well collated in Slovenia and I think also in Italy. Thank you.
Okay, and since you are dealing also with other categories of building, I mean, not only with school buildings, but also with, I suppose all of them are public buildings, but probably they should be buildings for public offices and so on. Are you planning a new set of, let's say, behavioral actions for these new categories of users, meaning that probably you should change your approach, considering that you don't have to operate with young boys or with children, but with adults that are using the building for a different purpose?
Yes, you're right, Antonia. We have updated the parameters of the tools in line with the new user groups. Of course, because there are still kindergartens in it, and I think a school or two, some of the parameters stayed the same, but we added some new behavioral modification parameters.
Okay. And what about the tools? Are you planning to improve the tools, or are you using the same set of tools, meaning the calculator and the app as they were developed in the first phase?
The basis of the tools is the same, but it's been updated and modified to the new content of the project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jan.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Antonio, for the questions. I think that the time has passed, but I see that there is still interest in the discussion. So if anybody else wants to make a question or a comment. Okay, I think that this is the end of our webinar. I would like to thank you, all of you, the speakers and the participants, very much for your participation here today. I think that all of us, we have worked in the field of energy efficiency of public buildings. In some cases, in some countries, it's more difficult to do so. In some others, it's quite easier. But we all recognize the importance of these activities. Thank you again, all of you, and we will be in touch for future events and activities and collaborations. Thank you a lot. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.